Okay. Uh, these are just some starting schematic symbols you can use if you want, or you can, if you have some in Visio that you like, you can export them. You can export any Visio image as a PDF or an SVG and then import it into Inkscape, and you can get access to all those figures. So it's pretty flexible for you to get up and running with whatever figures you want. So I'm actually just going to save this as a new file type. So to start, I'm just going to move these things off the canvas. So I just click and drag. Can you see my mouse?
Yep, yep.
Okay. I'm just going to click and drag this off. So the whole idea of Inkscape, the two main concepts are layers and groups. So there's obviously this picture of the colors. There's a lot of individual shapes going on here, and a lot of individual pieces to this, but they're all grouped together. So to ungroup them, I can right-click and press ungroup, or I can press Control-Shift-G, and that will break it down into individual pieces, as you can see. And sometimes you have to ungroup more than once. There's a lot of groups. But now that it's ungrouped, I can click and drag any pieces of this. And I'm zooming in and out by holding the control button and scrolling the mouse. So now that it's ungrouped, I can move these things around and edit them. And then I can highlight the whole thing again and then regroup them and move it around now. To descend into a group to edit it, you can also select the group and then double click on it, and now you're inside the group. And to ascend and go back to the top, you can just double click anywhere off to the side of the group, and now you're back at the top. So that's the group.
It's kind of like instead of like ungrouping and then editing it, you can double click on the image and then directly edit the image. Okay.
Exactly. You don't have to ungroup in order to edit. You just descend into it, edit what you want, and then ascend, and it just stays. Yeah, so that's the main way that you edit, is you just double click to descend to whatever level of depth you want. You can have groups inside of groups. And there might be a way where you can see it. View objects. Maybe it's XML editor. There's some ways you can see the different groups. I think this is what it is. Anyway, there's a lot of depth to Inkscape, but I'm just going over the top. So we'll start an example of just like maybe an inverter. So I can take the PMOS over here, copy and paste it, take the NMOS, copy and paste it. Both of these shapes are groups because there you can see there's different pieces inside of it. I can descend and edit it. So I can flip it by going up here and doing this button to reverse, to mirror it. Then we want to align them. So I can select one, press and hold the shift button, select the other one. So that they're both highlighted now. Go to this align. And if these aren't in your side panel, you can get to them by going up here at the top and clicking on it, and it'll bring it up onto the side panel. Then you can use this one to make them aligned like that. The way that it looks now, it looks like they're connected, but they're not actually connected. They're just kind of perfectly overlapping. If you actually want to connect them, I'll double click on this guy to descend. And if I double click on this shape, I'll enter the vertex editing mode. So I can see the vertexes to the shape, and I can click and drag them. I can add a new vertex by double clicking in the line. I can delete a vertex. If you delete a vertex, it'll automatically transform the remaining shape into a Bezier curve, which is like a curved line where you can drag it around and shape it like this. But if that's not what you want, you just highlight those two vertices and press this button up here that makes them back into a straight line. One of the most important things about the vertex mode is that it doesn't pay attention to groups anymore. You don't have to double click or ascend or descend. You can select, as you see, I'm scrolling over, and I can select, and it's showing me, it's highlighting all these different shapes. So now that I've got this one highlighted, I can click on this guy, highlight that dot, and then I'm going to hold the shift button, click on this guy. While I'm holding shift, I can select this one so that now both of them are highlighted. And then this button up here will take two disjointed vertices and then create a line between them like that. So now they're actually connected. And if I want this line to be cleaner, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having these vertexes in the middle of the line. You can't it doesn't result in any changes in how it looks. But if you wanted to get rid of these, you could just highlight them, delete them, which turns this back into a Bezier curve. But you just fix that by highlighting both of them and making them straight. So now they're connected. And while both of these are highlighted, I can use my keyboard arrows and go left, right, up and down to shift them. Or I can just click and drag them if I want to adjust them. And then I can double click to ascend out of the group. And so now this is one whole piece here that I've got. So I can do the gate the same way. I can highlight this guy and highlight that guy. And these are actually not lined up. So one way you could do it is you could highlight both of them like that, and then go back to the alignment, and you can align them vertically like that, so that now they're perfectly connected, and then just add the line between them. Or you can go to this vertex and highlight it, and then up here it shows the X and Y coordinates for that vertex. You can actually copy the X coordinate for this vertex, then go up to this one and select it, and then paste that value in, and it'll, oops, did I mess it up? Copy that one, go into this one, paste it, yeah, and it'll adjust it.
X is same. I think you should do Y.
No, Y is vertical. I can go select this and then do that. See how it is going to inch it up and down. I think it did adjust on the X. It just wasn't.
So it's just adjusting, not connecting. Okay, got it.
It's here. I can make it more exaggerated. I'm going to bump this guy out, and then I go and I copy. I press Control A to select the whole thing, and then Control C to copy. Then I go to this guy, Control A, Control V to paste it, and I hit Enter. There it goes.
Yeah.
Now they're perfectly aligned, and I can go back and connect them. Oops. I connect them with this. And these other vertex editing tools up here can do other things. Like if you want these both to be, rather than connecting them with a line, you can actually make them become the same point and connect them like that. There's a bunch of stuff you can do. Or in this one, let's say I want to rip this line open. I can highlight these and then press this one, and it will undo it. So there's a bunch of ways you can go about editing. And this is basically how I make the schematics. Once I've got all my pieces put down, this is how I draw the lines between transistors and stuff. You can see that this is not aligned anymore. And you could create a rule by clicking over here and dragging out to see like alignment. So like obviously this wire here is too far out. So I can click on this, highlight the X coordinate and copy it, and then go to these ones, highlight both of them and paste the X coordinate, and now it's perfectly aligned. And then I can hover over this ruler, this line, and then press the delete key and it'll go away. And then I can just like copy the VDD thing, put it on top, copy the VSS thing, put that on bottom, and you know, there's your inverter. Does that make sense?
This looks so cool. Yeah.
I think the only other main concept, and now that I've got this thing made, I can right click on it and group it, and so now it's just one whole object. You can scale things by, the best way to do it is hold the Control key and then use this corner one, which scales everything proportionally. If you don't hold the Control key and you just drag it, you can like skew it like this where it looks awful. So you have to make sure it does it proportional. So you have to hold the Control key. And you can actually see down here at the bottom of the screen, it's got this like little help like description. If I hover over this arrow, so it's lit up green like this, and you look down there, it says scale selection with control to scale uniformly. So that's like the little help toolbar. It tells you what you can do. Hold control to scale it. And then if you do that, obviously all the lines become thicker. And so the way that you adjust the thickness of the lines is you go into the vertex editing mode pretty much, and then you go to the fill and stroke. The stroke is what is used for these lines. So the stroke style tab has the info for how thick the line is. You can adjust the thickness of the line in pixels. You can make it have a pattern. yeah, a bunch of options there. Just pressing Control Z to get back to where I was before. Okay, the next thing is about the size of the figure. You press Control Shift D to bring up this document properties, which lets you pick the size of the page, or the size of the canvas, which is this box that we're drawing in. The best way to do this for figures is to make the page size the exact size it's going to be in the actual paper. That means that when you export your figure, you're not going to have to scale it or resize it to make it fit in your paper. You just put it in and it fits exactly in the column width. And so for IEEE papers, the width of the column is about 325 pixels. And the height is whatever you want it to be in order to take up more height in your column of text. But you set the column width to be about 325 pixels. And this way, like let's say you put some text down, and Arial is the good font to use for papers. You put some Arial down and you say NMOS, and it's Arial, like 10-point font, because you know the 10-point font is like readable, it's not too small. But if this page were like actually 12 inches wide, then when you put it in your paper, you're going to have to scale it down, and so the font is going to be actually smaller. So if you make your actual figure size the exact size it's going to be in your paper, then the font size will match. And this way, any figure you make, the font size will match in all your figures. Versus if you have figures that are different sizes and you have to scale them down to fit into your columns, and then all the fonts in all your figures are going to be a little bit different because you've had to resize all your pictures. So anyway, that's how you adjust the size. And then to export, you could do a PNG image, and you want to select page, export area as page. That will export the whole page, not just the drawing.
But when you insert this image, like the extra white space in the page will also be there in the image, right?
Yes. When you export the page, it's going to export the whole square you see here. But when you're making a figure for a paper, this is assumed. Like your figure everything should be sized so that it takes up the full like width. So you have like a bunch of things in your paper, and if you don't want this extra white space first, then what you do is you adjust the height, like 100 something maybe, and it'll resize it, and then you can go move. You can move your stuff, and if it doesn't fit, you can go back to this and just use this little arrow to bump it up. I think it's frozen. Here it goes. It's a little bit laggy, but you can press the up arrow and it'll adjust its, So now my figure, I don't have extra white space in my figure, but the width is still the same as the width of the text in the paper. It's still 325 pixels. Now I can export the page, and the DPI should be like 300 at least. And then you set the file name, and then you have to press the export button.
So the higher the DP, more the image quality, but even at the same time, the size of the image would be very high, right?
Yeah, it's going to make the image take more disk space. So 300 is usually a sweet spot. If you go higher than 300, it starts to take up way too much size. But if you go less than 300, it starts to look, it's kind of blurry. The better option is just to do save as, and you can save it as any of these file types. LaTeX uses PDF. Microsoft Word uses EPS, so you can export EPS and then import that into Microsoft Word. The last thing I think that I should cover is the eyedropper tool and the colors. These colors were generated using that color map tool I made in MATLAB. You can regenerate this for different colors if you want, or you can change the colors a little bit. But let's say you create a shape. This has a fill and a stroke. The fill is a color on the inside of the figure. The stroke is the color of the outside the border. So if you want to make this be a color, you can select it, pick the eyedropper tool, and then you could just click any one of these to take the fill, to set the fill of your shape. And then if you want to set the stroke, you have to hold Control and Shift. And again, that's on the bottom of the page. You can see it says Shift plus click to set stroke. So if I hold Shift and then I click, it sets the border of my thing. You can also dive way into it and get technical. Like if I click Fill and Stroke, I can actually see the RGB values, and I can like adjust it like that. Same thing goes for this. I can click any color and I can see the RGB values for it. So that's covers the stroke and the fill. If I want, let's say I want to make one of those like cascaded looking, like if I have a bunch of devices that are stacked, like an LDO, basically like a digital LDO, I can make. This is the last piece of the tutorial where I'm just going to show how layers work. I'll put that up kind of a little bit, and I'll stretch this one down just a little bit. Then I'll draw like a rectangle around this guy, and I will make the stroke kind of just. I'll make the fill like a very light gray, and then I'll make the stroke just a little bit darker and kind of thin. And this button up here sends it. This is how you adjust the layers. If I can slowly start to send it down by one layer at a time, and you can see it starts to go below each of the shapes. Or I can just press this button, which sends it straight to the back layer.
Okay.
Now that it's here, I can right-click on it and press Duplicate. And when you duplicate a shape, it automatically goes to the very front. So then what I do is I send it back to the back, and then I can press the up arrow once to shift it up, and I can press the right arrow once to shift it right. And I can fine-tune this also by pressing these buttons up here and adjusting it. But now you can see it's cascaded back, and I can do it one more time to make the third one. And that's kind of how people create those like cascaded shapes. Like you've got a bunch of PMOSs that are stacked. And I actually think the background's too dark, so I can select all of them by pressing and holding the Shift key, and then just clicking each of them. And I can go to Fill and adjust the fill of all of them at the same time, and kind of make it a little bit lighter, like that. So that's like, that's just an example of how you can use the layers to. And a lot of these functions exist in like Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, but in order to get to those options in PowerPoint, you have to like right-click on a bunch of menus and stuff to get to it. It takes a lot of time to do these things in PowerPoint versus in Inkscape. All the buttons are here.
Exactly.
So that covers the main things. Are there any questions or anything you want to know how to do? But in the meantime, I'll show an example of MATLAB. So I use Inkscape to post-process MATLAB. I'm going to jump to this one. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I saved this in MATLAB as an SVG, and here it is. It's the same thing. It's all grouped. So I can ungroup it, and it'll ungroup some of it. But then, like you see down here, it's got VDD, but it's not. I can't hide the whole thing. It's split it up. V is here, and DD. The subscript is like it's separate. I can like drag it. It's like weird how it exported it from MATLAB. And so unfortunately for some cases like this, I will just remake the label. I just go VDD,
And then you delete that particular one. Okay.
Yeah, I would delete it. I'd go Arial, and you can match the font pretty close, like Arial. Oops, I need to hide this. Arial 12 point, then you highlight these two, make it a subscript, hide the whole thing, make it bold. You can upsize it if you want, and another thing you can do is delete that, move that here. If I want to align it, I can press on the border of this, then select the VDD, go to the alignment, and like center it. I can go in and I can edit any of these shapes. I can edit the line. I can make the line have dashes now if I want. I can delete individual markers. Like you can't even do this in MATLAB. I can remove the border from the legend if I want. I can go in and I can highlight the legend and group it so that it's movable.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things I do on my MATLAB figures is I don't like the thickness of the border on MATLAB figures. I think it's too thin. So I go in and I will click on this. It's fragmented. So this is just the outer border on this side, but I'll select it and I change the stroke to like 2. And now it's thicker. And then I click on this one. And I change it on that one too. I can select all of these background lines by pressing Shift and Control, because right now they're in different groups.
Okay.
I think one way that you can avoid, if you want to select objects in multiple groups at the same time, you press and hold Control and Shift. And then anywhere you click, it'll select, regardless of whether or not it's in a group.
Okay.
So I can select all those. I can maybe make them a little bit thinner. I can change the stroke paint and make it like lighter if I want. You know, you can basically customize everything about the figure to make it look a little bit nicer. There's not a library built into Inkscape. I'm going to share this file, so you will have these shapes, which are pretty much the most popular ones. So like, for example, some figures, if you need some specialty ones, you can make it on your own. So like for an FLL, I would take this amp, I would make a circle here, steal the stroke from this guy so it's the same color, make it have no fill, draw a straight line in the middle like this. You want to make that little wavy thing. Go into the vertex editing mode, add a dot, and we want it to be centered. So we're going to highlight all of them, distribute them perfectly. Actually, if I want it to be wider, I can bump this one, distribute them. Now for this one, I can click that, which turns this into a Bezier. Anyway, I would go like this, you know, make that little squiggly shape, and then finally highlight and group. And now you've got like an oscillator symbol that you can copy and reuse. If there's like a block, like something else, then I would just draw like a box like this, you know, I need to make this smaller, even smaller. Okay. Organize it like that, make it a little bit closer together up here. Aerial, condensed maybe. You know, there's like just like a generic block. There's also another cool thing. Let me show you this. There's a plugin for LaTeX. So if you want to make some like nice looking some equations, I don't think any other software does this. So like if you want to do this, there's an extension called text. I'll redo it. Extensions text. I can go in here and I can do like actual LaTeX code. You know, CF. I'll just do that, and I hit OK, and it actually will process the LaTeX code, put it in. I don't know where it put it. I'll put it up here, and I can actually put like full equations, whatever you would put in a LaTeX, it can go in here as part of your figure.
Wow. Yeah. Oh.